order to have a skill in life, you must be born with it. This was further reinforced when I was in school in a math class. Our teacher, by the way, this was in the 90s, just so you have a point of reference. Our teacher, if you asked what he thought was a stupid question, he had one of the Sealy sheep from the Sleep Country commercial. Remember those? If you asked a stupid question, he would pick it up and throw it at your head. And you had to keep that on your desk and sit there in shame for having the affront to ask such a stupid question until someone else asked a question even dumber than yours. So naturally, I thought either you got something or you didn't. This changed about 1.5 years ago because I attended a writing workshop. And after that workshop, I started to write. And boy, did I start to write. I grabbed my old Alpha Smart keyboard out of the closet. This thing's got a 4-line display. It runs on 3 AA batteries for 1 year. My smartphone barely lasts 8 hours on a full charge. And I started to write and reflect on the successes and failures in my life. Not just my life, but in other people's lives too. Were there patterns I could replicate? Were there systems? Or was this all blind luck and chance? And it turns out there were parallels. You're welcome. You're welcome. We have a love-hate relationship. I love you, man. There were parallels between the way I program and the way I learn. Think back to the title of my talk, Unhandled Exception. You might be scratching your head going, what's an unhandled exception, Elias? I'm not a programmer. If there are any programmers in the room, you'll know them right away because they'll be sitting there sniggering quietly to themselves. An unhandled exception is when a program or an app on your phone crashes. Remember the blue screen of death in the 1990s? Remember the pain of having worked on a document in WordPerfect for an entire week, getting that report done absolutely perfectly right, having it all ready to go, and then boom, blue screen of death, there goes your document, there goes the last week of your life down the toilet. And all you're thinking is the same thing my grade 5 teacher said when she admonished us for using a dirty word, F-U-C and of course K. It turns out that some programmers actually deliberately build their programs by solving one unhandled exception at a time. They build up the program in building blocks. I did the same way with a lot of my learning. For example, swimming. First thing we did, hang on to the edge and motorboat, blow bubbles. Second thing we did was just hang on to the edge and kick. Get used to floating, get used to kicking. Third thing, swim 3 meters with the flutterboard, hanging on to that sucker for dear life. Then we swim 6 meters and 9 meters, and finally we ditch that flutterboard. We don't need that worthless piece of crap anymore. And suddenly we're swimming. By solving the unhandled exceptions one at a time, I built a skill set for swimming. Now, the fear of drowning, that's still down there. And by the way, that's a good fear to have. But my ability to swim means that I'm not as afraid of drowning. That was the first component, learning how I learn by building on the unhandled exceptions, one at a time. Second was reframing my idea of success. Perfect example. Earlier this year, my girlfriend taught me how to play the ukulele. Now let's define play the ukulele, because I'm certainly not holding concerts at Carnegie Hall yet. But I know just enough, as in the C and G chord, I think one other, that I was able to play Michelle Happy Birthday as my first public performance on Facebook Live. And what the hell? I played 3 chords. That's playing the ukulele. That's success in my mind. Don't you agree? So that was the second part. There we go. 1, 2. Look at that. I can still count. That's good. But there was one final component. One final component. And I learned it around this time last year. This is the part I rewrote a little bit of this speech when I was in the car today. Literally, as I'm driving, packet of gum in one hand and on the steering wheel, and in the other hand, a pen furiously writing at the red light. I don't recommend it, by the way. However, it is worth less demerit points than texting and driving. See, we had dated when we were both in university and shortly after I'd graduated. And then we ended up drifting apart. And I figured that we'd have beautiful lives, and we went our separate way. And I certainly didn't expect for our paths to cross again. But around November last year, I get this message out of the blue. And at the time, I was hosting MoMondays London. So getting random messages on Facebook was kind of expected. And I see this message from Penelope. And I'm like, I'm now awake. A couple days later, we're talking on the phone. And it was like no time had passed at all. See, my cell phone at 2 hours drops the call every single time. So that should give you an idea of how long our phone call was. We ended up talking one night for 4 hours. We regularly run the limit on our cell phones. But at one point, as we're reconnecting, we're catching each other up on our respective lives. And I tell her about something I was doing. I think it had to do with my event app, Tractus. I can't remember. Details aren't important. What is important is she congratulated me on it, and I was just about to make a self-deprecating joke, as I normally would. I opened my mouth, and I stopped short. It was as if time stood still and reality melted away for just a moment with no LSD required. And I thought to myself, are you sure about that? When you make those self-deprecating jokes about yourself, what are you actually saying? I can't, I'm not, I won't. Not only are you putting yourself down, you're putting this other person who believes in you down. Could this be one of the keys, or the key, to unlocking the potential that so many have seen in you? It caused a shift in my thinking from, instead of saying, I can't do something, to asking, how can I do something? For example, lifting weights earlier this year. I went from having no upper body strength to just the other day being able to do 6 chin-ups. I was 250 pounds with cerebral palsy, and I used that as an excuse to not be athletic. Now I'm athletic in spite of the damn cerebral palsy. In spite of it, because I asked, how can I? How can I? I built on those little successes, going to the gym every couple of days, doing the 5-minute workout in the morning, reframing that idea of success. It's what's enabled me to go from being afraid of swimming to using it as an escape, to not being a math person. Last night I did calculus for fun, for Christ's sakes. From not being athletic because of cerebral palsy to being athletic in spite of cerebral palsy. In short, it's what's allowed me to go from really kind of loathing and deprecating myself to loving myself And it's all because I learned how I learn. The unhandled exceptions, the reframing of success. And a conversation with one incredible woman. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Elias Purunen. Thank you.